How does a civilization last for 5,000 years? How does it go from a few scattered villages to a global superpower, surviving cycles of total collapse and incredible rebirth over and over again? The story of China is a story of dynasties that last for centuries, of epic inventions that change the world, and of a philosophical core that has guided a quarter of humanity. You've probably heard the claim, 5,000 years of history. It's a powerful idea, but the reality is a little more complicated, and honestly, a lot more interesting. This grand story doesn't begin with a king or a conqueror, but with a legend, a hero who supposedly tamed the massive floods that ravaged ancient China. For generations, the Yellow and Yangtze rivers, the twin cradles of this civilization, brought life, but they also brought total destruction. Then came a man named Yu. For 13 years, he worked tirelessly, not by building dams like his father, who had tried and failed, but by dredging new channels to guide the rivers to the sea. Through this incredible sacrifice, Yu the Great, as he'd be known, controlled the waters and made the land safe. In doing so, he laid the foundation for China's very first dynasty. From these mythical beginnings, a real and spectacular history would be written, not in books, but on bone. This is the story of how China really began. Long before any dynasty, Neolithic cultures thrived along China's great rivers. People like the Longshan crafted pottery so fine it looked like it was made by a machine. But it was the legendary Xia Dynasty, said to have been founded by Yu the Great around 2070 BCE, that supposedly kicked off dynastic rule in China. For a long time, historians wondered if the Xia were just a myth, a great story to create a sense of an ancient, unified past. But then, at sites like Early II, archaeologists started digging up palaces and bronze workshops, evidence that a complex state really did exist during this period. While we still don't have a name carved in a rock that says, "We are the Xia," these discoveries bridge the gap between myth and recorded history. And that record begins, without a doubt, with the Shang Dynasty, which ruled from around 1600 BCE. The Shang are the first dynasty for which we have hard, written proof, and the proof is spectacular. They were masters of bronze, creating these intricate ritual vessels that show a society obsessed with spirits and the afterlife. But their most important innovation was writing. The Shang kings were desperate to know the future. Would the harvest be good? Would they win the next battle? To find out, they turned to their ancestors. Diviners would carve questions onto turtle shells and ox shoulder blades, the famous oracle bones. They'd apply a hot poker, the bone would crack, and the diviner would read the cracks to find the answer. These inscriptions are the earliest form of Chinese writing ever found. They reveal a complex world of kings, rituals, and warfare, proving the Shang were very real. The characters carved into these bones are the direct ancestors of the characters used in China today, a powerful symbol of the civilization's incredible continuity. The Shang kings ruled with a mix of military might and unique spiritual authority, but their power eventually faded. Their final ruler was said to be a monster, and a new power was rising on their western border. Around 1046 BCE, a vassal state of the Shang, the Zhou, rose up and overthrew them. To justify this rebellion, the Zhou kings introduced a political concept so powerful it would shape the next 3,000 years of Chinese history: the Mandate of Heaven. The idea was simple but revolutionary. Heaven, a divine cosmic force, grants a ruler the right, the mandate, to rule. This ruler, the Son of Heaven, had to be just and wise. If he or his dynasty became corrupt or incompetent, heaven would show its anger through floods, famines, and uprisings. These were signs that the ruler had lost the mandate, giving a new leader the right to take over and start a new dynasty. This wasn't a divine right to rule forever. It was a divine right to rule well. It was a moral contract between the ruler and the people, and it created the framework for the dynastic cycle, the constant rise and fall of dynasties that would define Chinese history. The Zhou became the longest dynasty in China's history, lasting almost 800 years, but it split into two parts, a stable Western Zhou and a chaotic Eastern Zhou. During the Eastern Zhou, the king's power fell apart, and his vassals became rulers of their own independent states. This kicked off the Spring and Autumn period, a time of constant war and shifting alliances. This chaos then spiraled into the Warring States period, a brutal 250-year free-for-all where 7 states fought for total domination. It was an age of incredible violence and military innovation. And yet, Out of this chaos came China's greatest intellectual explosion, the 100 schools of thought. As rulers fought for survival, they begged for advice from anyone who could give them an edge. This created a vibrant marketplace for ideas. Philosophers proposed radically different ways to run a state and live a good life. The most influential was a humble teacher named Confucius. He looked back to the early Zhou as a lost golden age and argued that order could only be restored through morality, social hierarchy, and ritual. His philosophy, Confucianism, would one day become the bedrock of the Chinese state. But he wasn't alone. You had Taoists, who argued for withdrawing from society and living in harmony with the Tao, the natural way of the universe. And then there were the legalists, who had a much darker view of humanity. They argued that people were selfish, and that the only way to build a strong state was with strict laws and harsh punishments. It was this brutally effective philosophy that would finally bring the chaos to an end. Out of the 7 warring states, one emerged as the most ruthless and efficient, the state of Qin. Located on the western frontier, the Qin had been looked down on as semi-barbaric, but they embraced legalism like no one else. They built a powerful army and a brutally efficient bureaucracy. In 246 BCE, a 13-year-old boy named Ying Zhang took the throne. With his brilliant and ruthless minister, Li Si, he unleashed the full power of the Qin war machine. One by one, he extinguished the other 6 states. In 221 BCE, he finished his conquest and unified China. But Ying Zhang wasn't satisfied with the title of king. He wanted something bigger. So, he invented a new one, Qin Shi Huang, the first emperor of Qin. To make sure the empire would never break apart again, Qin Shi Huang launched a series of radical reforms. He got rid of the old feudal states and divided the empire into 36 commanderies run by officials he appointed himself. He standardized everything. The different writing scripts were unified into one system, a critical step that allowed people from different regions to communicate. He standardized currency into a single bronze coin, and even standardized the axles of carts to fit the ruts on the new imperial highways he was building. To defend his northern frontier from the nomadic Xiongnu tribes, he connected existing walls to create the first version of the Great Wall of China, a project built by hundreds of thousands of laborers. Qin Shi Huang wanted his dynasty to last for 10,000 generations. He was obsessed with immortality, sending expeditions to find the elixir of life. For his own afterlife, he built a massive, city-sized mausoleum, famously guarded by the terracotta army. Thousands of life-sized clay soldiers, each with a unique face, ready to fight for him in the next world. But the very thing that made the Qin so successful, its harsh legalism, was also its downfall. His rule was absolute and brutal. He suppressed all other philosophies, famously ordering the burning of books and the burying alive of scholars who dared to disagree. The immense cost of his wars and construction projects was paid for by the crushing labor of the common people. Just 3 years after Qin Shi Huang's death, in 210 BCE, the empire exploded into rebellion. The dynasty that was meant to last 10,000 generations was over in just 15 years. But the idea he created, a single, unified, imperial China, would last forever. The man who picked up the pieces was a peasant rebel leader who became Emperor Gaozu of the Han Dynasty. The Han, which lasted for over 400 years, is considered China's first great golden age. The Han rulers learned from the Qin's mistakes. They kept the Qin's brilliant bureaucracy, but eased the harshest laws and lowered taxes. They blended legalist efficiency with Confucian morality, eventually making Confucianism the official state ideology. To find talented officials, they created an early version of the civil service exam, testing candidates on their knowledge of Confucian classics. The Han was an era of incredible expansion and prosperity. Emperor Wu pushed the empire's borders into Central Asia, and his campaigns opened up a network of trade routes that would become legendary, the Silk Road. For the first time, a direct link was forged between China and the civilizations of Persia, India, and even the Roman Empire. China sent silk westward, a fabric so prized it was literally worth its weight in gold. In return, it got horses, glassware, and new ideas. One of the most important was Buddhism, which started to trickle into China from India. After the Han finally collapsed in 220 CE, China shattered. For the next 3.5 centuries, known as the period of disunion, the empire was a kaleidoscope of warring kingdoms. This includes the famous Three Kingdoms period, romanticized in Chinese literature. It was a time of immense conflict, but also cultural fusion, as nomadic peoples from the north conquered and assimilated, while Buddhism spread widely, offering comfort in a chaotic world. Reunification finally came in 581 CE, with the short-lived but crucial Xia Dynasty. The Sui, a lot like the Qin, reunified China through brute force, but exhausted themselves with massive building projects. Their greatest achievement was the Grand Canal, a massive waterway linking the rice-rich south with the political centers of the north, a vital artery for grain and troops that would serve China for centuries. But their harsh rule led to a swift collapse, paving the way for one of the most glorious eras in all of Chinese history, the Tang Dynasty. The Tang Dynasty, from 618 to 907 CE, was China's second golden age. This was a period of unmatched power, wealth, and cosmopolitan cool. The Tang capital, Chang'an, was almost certainly the largest and most sophisticated city on earth, a buzzing metropolis of over 1 million people. Merchants, monks, and musicians from all over Asia flocked to the city, bringing new fashions, foods, and faiths. The Tang was remarkably open. This was the great age of Chinese poetry, with masters like Li Bai and Du Fu crafting verses still memorized by children today. Art, music, and sculpture flourished. The Tang Empire was a confident, glittering civilization that projected its culture all across East Asia. This incredible story is just one part of our world's amazing history. If you're enjoying this, hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you don't miss our next deep dive into another great civilization. Like all dynasties, the Tang fell, weakened by rebellion and decay. Its collapse in 907 CE led to another chaotic period. But once again, unity was restored, this time by the Song Dynasty in 960 CE. The Song Dynasty is a paradox. Militarily, it was constantly getting beat up by powerful nomadic empires to the north. But economically and technologically, the Song was probably the most advanced civilization on the planet. Its cities were buzzing centers of commerce, with a rising merchant class and vibrant urban culture. And it was during the Song that 3 inventions were perfected that would completely change human history. First, woodblock printing, developed earlier, became widespread, allowing books to be mass-produced and leading to a surge in literacy. Second, the magnetic compass, which had been around for centuries, was finally used for navigating the seas, revolutionizing trade. And third, gunpowder, a Taoist alchemical accident, was used in weapons like fire lances and primitive grenades for the first time. Printing, the compass, and gunpowder, 3 innovations that would later transform Europe, all perfected in Song China. But for all its genius, the Song Dynasty couldn't hold off its northern enemies forever. In 1279, for the first time in its history, all of China was conquered and ruled by foreigners, the Mongols. Kublai Khan, grandson of Genghis Khan, established his own dynasty, the Yuan. He made his capital at modern-day Beijing and ruled as a Chinese emperor. The Yuan integrated China into the vast Mongol Empire, which stretched across Eurasia. This Pax Mongolica secured the Silk Road and promoted contact between East and West, famously bringing the Venetian merchant Marco Polo to Kublai Khan's court. But Mongol rule was deeply resented by the native Han Chinese, who saw their conquerors as barbarian outsiders. After less than a century, rebellion broke out. The Yuan was overthrown in 1368 and replaced by the Ming Dynasty, restoring Han Chinese rule. The Ming is often seen as a period of restoration and grandeur. They built the magnificent Forbidden City in Beijing and finished the Great Wall into the form we see today. The Ming was also responsible for one of the most extraordinary chapters in naval history. Between 1405 and 1433, the emperor sponsored a massive fleet of treasure ships under the Admiral Zheng He. These ships, some reportedly over 400 feet long, though their exact size is debated, made 7 epic voyages across the Indian Ocean. They visited Southeast Asia, India, the Persian Gulf, and even Africa, projecting Chinese power across the known world. And then, they just stopped. The court, tangled in politics and worried about costs and northern threats, turned inward, destroying the fleet and its records. China was entering a period of isolation, just as Europe was beginning its age of exploration. The Ming Dynasty fell in 1644, not to an internal rebellion, but to another foreign invasion. From beyond the Great Wall, a people known as the Manchus swept down and established the final imperial dynasty in China's history, the Qing. The Qing, like the Mongols, were foreign rulers, but they were incredibly successful, adopting the Chinese system of government while keeping their own Manchu identity. Under brilliant emperors like Kangxi and Qianlong, the Qing Empire flourished. They expanded China to its greatest territorial extent, incorporating Taiwan, Mongolia, and the complex regions of Tibet and Xinjiang, creating the basic outline of the China we know today. For 150 years, the Qing presided over a period of peace and prosperity. But by the late 18th century, the dynasty was rotting from within. The population was growing too fast, and corruption was everywhere. More ominously, a new, aggressive power appeared off its coasts, the industrializing nations of the West, led by Great Britain. Western powers wanted to trade opium, but the Qing court dismissed them as irrelevant barbarians. This clash led to the Opium Wars in the mid-19th century. British gunboats, armed with modern technology, shattered China's defenses. The humiliating defeats forced the Qing to sign a series of unequal treaties, giving up territory like Hong Kong and opening the country to foreign influence. This kicked off what's known in China as the Century of Humiliation. The Qing was rocked by massive rebellions, like the devastating Taiping Rebellion, which killed millions, and suffered more defeats by foreign powers, including a shocking loss to a modernizing Japan. The dynasty seemed powerless. The mandate of heaven was clearly slipping away. The final blow came in 1911. Province after province declared independence from Qing rule. Revolutionaries, inspired by figures like Sun Yat-sen, called for a republic. On February 12, 1912, the last emperor, a 6-year-old boy named Puyi, formally abdicated. The Qing dynasty was over, and with it, more than 2,000 years of Chinese imperial rule came to an end. The fall of the Qing didn't lead to a stable, modern China right away. It kicked off decades of civil war and foreign invasion, but it did mark the end of an ancient cycle. From the legendary Yu taming the floods to the boy emperor abdicating in the face of revolution, the story of dynastic China is a breathtaking saga of chaos and unity, a brilliant innovation and stubborn tradition. Each dynasty, from the bronze-casting Shang to the cosmopolitan Tang to the world-building Qing, left its mark, building on the foundations of the last. It's a history that shows an incredible capacity for renewal, a story of a civilization that could shatter into 100 pieces, and yet, time and again, be put back together. The imperial era may be over, but the 5,000-year legacy of this extraordinary civilization continues to shape the destiny of China and of our world. What part of this incredible history fascinates you the most? Was it the philosophical mosh pit of the warring states, the incredible voyages of Zheng He, or the rise of the first emperor? Let me know in the comments below. And for more journeys into the epic story of our world, make sure you subscribe. And thanks for watching.